Hi, everyone. This is The Current Temp with Joey Sulipeck, and we've got a special edition tonight that's literally about the current temp because it is dangerous out there. In fact, I don't know that I've ever in my life worn short sleeve with a bow tie. My wife was telling me it is not a good look, but I thought we're going to do it just to set the tone because it's about serious heat and how to keep you safe. We're going to answer two important critical questions tonight. One is, has humidity become worse in the past 40 years? And what's the 1-2 punch that we all have to deal with? All right, before we get to that, let's talk about our phenomenal sponsor, Lexus of Memphis. Hello, phenomenal product, and of course, amazing people, top-tier customer service. I mean, listen, Consumer Reports or just the guy driving one down the street, everybody knows about the quality of this product, and thank you to Lexus of Memphis for being a part of what we're doing here. So what is going on in the Mid-South, and what are we fighting right now, and what can make you safer? Well, let's get you guys all up to speed. We are inside a brutal dome of high pressure, and that means it's trapping heat and humidity and leading to record highs right now, not just in the Mid-South, but this is encompassing the entire eastern seaboard and into Texas. We're seeing record highs being broken in New York, and that's a bad place to have record highs because they don't have air conditioning like we do. Philadelphia, these northern cities, they're all dealing with it. So what happens is this area of high pressure gets settled over a region, sort of like the dome on a cake, like Grandma used to make, the big glass cover that gets set over this entire big piece of real estate, and it traps inside of it both the heat and the humidity. And of course, you can get pulse thunderstorms under that dome, but a front can't break through. The front's not strong enough. The high pressure is too strong, and it will eventually weaken. But until it does, we're trapped in this day after day pattern, which leads to another danger, the 1-2 punch. And I'll talk about that more in just a moment. So what in the world causes all this humidity that we deal with in the Mid-South? One of the toughest things we deal with in the summer is how to battle this heat and humidity. Where does that story start? Well, it starts with evaporation. You've all heard that. The kids learn it in school. It's part of the water cycle. Sunshine and all that energy pounds down on bodies of water. Let's just talk about the ocean. When that energy from the sun hits the ocean surface, something magical happens. Evaporation is where we see that liquid turn into a gas. Now, once that gas begins to rise up, that's the moisture in the air. That's the water vapor. You can't see it, but you can definitely feel it. It's the same thing you encounter when you step out of the shower and it's hot and foggy and there's all that moisture in the air. That's evaporation. You're dealing with a very sort of dense and close situation. I mean, like Grandma used to say, it feels awfully close outside. And just as sort of an added bonus, because we are on the current temp, what else does that do? Gives us those clouds that we all love. And of course, that's a part of the water cycle and it kicks everything off. All right. So now we've got evaporation, putting these molecules in the air. How does that impact us here in the Mid-South? Well, the more water vapor you have, the more humid it is. Now, keep in mind, it's hotter in the summer, which is why you have more evaporation, which is why it's more humid in the summer. Cold doesn't evaporate as efficiently, so in the winter, it's not as humid. That's why it's more humid in the summer than it is in the winter. So what exactly is happening, and why does all that humidity affect us so strongly? Well, let's talk about why humidity makes us feel the way it does and how it affects our body. We've got an organism in the brain called the hypothalamus, and when we start to get too hot, the hypothalamus sends a signal to your body's sweat gland saying, we've got to cool this engine down. We've got to get some water up to the Earth's surface, and that's the skin, to cool us off pretty efficiently. So let's talk about that. The hypothalamus talks to the sweat gland. The sweat gland then says, I've got to send some moisture up there in the form of sweat, and I need that to cool down, to cool the body down. So you've got the energy is supposed to evaporate, wick and pull that heat away from your person, and to cool you down. And now, real quickly, something else occurs at the same time, electrolytes. And we're losing electrolytes. I'm going to talk about that in a second. Before I do that, let's talk about why it's so humid in the Mid-South. Well, because we've got this humongous reservoir of water called the Gulf not too far down the road. And as we get that summertime heating, we get the winds out of the south, it pushes all that moisture towards us, and we are just inundated with humidity. All right, now what about electrolytes? Why is that so critical? What in the world is an electrolyte? An electrolyte is a mineral that carries an electric charge, and that's critical because it's talking to our cells, feeding them nutrients, telling them what to do, telling them how to operate. We are losing electrolytes when we sweat. We're getting rid of those. They're coming out of our bodies. You've heard things like sodium, potassium, all those things are in Gatorade. That's what's an electrolyte. And it is important because we need those replenished, even more so when it's hotter and more humid, because when we lose electrolytes, that can lead to things like muscle fatigue, confusion, cramps, dehydration is all part of that. So electrolytes, critical to the way that we operate every single day. All right. So how much water vapor is around us is now going to affect how efficient that evaporation process is. And this is at the key in the heart of why this is such a dangerous situation in the Mid-South. Our body is trying to put out that water and sweat to cool down. But if you're surrounded by a lot of moisture, getting even more surrounded by moisture, it can't do that. If you've ever worked outside on a hot, humid day, your t-shirt is just soaking wet because you're not evaporating. And so what's happening is sort of like running your engine in your car and all the radiator fluid has leaked out. Can't cool down the engine. It's going to overheat. And so that's why it's so important that we pay attention to what we're doing and how our bodies are operating when we get into this situation, because we are fighting an uphill battle here in the Mid-South because of how much heat and humidity that we have. All right. So now just an add-on, if you're in the desert where it's even hotter but drier, you feel better. You feel your body is actually not under as much stress, because even though it can be a hotter air temperature, the humidity is much lower, which allows your body to evaporate the heat quicker, and you feel better. I'll tell you this too. I used to get this complaint all the time. People would say, why are you talking about the heat index all the time? The heat index is what your body thinks the temperature is because of the humidity, and that's critical. So in other words, I could have said, hey, the temperature is only 89 when the heat index was 103. Well, what's going to knock you down or hurt your kids or your animals? It's 103. So that's what you need to be really paying attention to, is how your body feels in those situations. All right. So now one of the 1-2 questions was, is it more humid now than it was 40 years ago? Sadly, the answer to that is yes, because all the data shows we have heated up. We are hotter now over the past 40 years than we were before that. And keep in mind, weather is cyclical, so you can attribute that to whatever you want. But it is more humid now than it was when we were kids, or our parents were kids, or our grandparents were kids, because we're in a very much hot cycle. So what's the 1-2 punch I talked about? Well, let's discuss that. And that's one of the things that is the most dangerous when we get under the dome of high pressure. One of the things that can provide relief in a normal situation is nighttime cooling. We see the sun go down, cool breezes come out, people go out and sit on the porch, you sit out and walk around the neighborhood, you cool off, the house cools off, and that's okay, your body gets a break. When we get into a situation we're in now with this dome of high pressure, we don't cool off at night, the temperatures aren't dropping. The other problem is how daytime heating soaks into metropolitan areas, concrete, steel, asphalt, and doesn't cool off at night either. Think about heating up a rock, it really hot in a fire, and then grabbing it. It takes a long time for that rock to cool down. That's what we're dealing with in these big cities. And you go out to the countryside, things like grass and trees, they have different reflectivities. They'll cool down more. If you've ever ridden the Green Line, which we do quite often in our family, you come out of that big hot field and go into the woods, you can feel the temperature drop significantly. Well, when you live in a big city or you live downtown, it is hot longer, and sometimes you don't get any relief at night. And of course, that can be a big time problem. So how much heat gets radiated throughout the evening is a big part of the issue here. All right, now let's get you prepared and make sure that you're safe and know what to look for. What should you be aware of? What are the warning signs? If you're outside, you're working in the yard, you're not paying attention, watch out for things like cramping up. And then the small ones that can add up really quickly, like being a little lightheaded. I overdo it in the yard. We're yard people. We work in the yard all the time, and I've had to get smarter about it because I have suffered from these where I've gotten a headache, become sick, maybe getting super tired. You need to pre-plan these things and, of course, stay ahead of the game. We're going to tell you how in just a moment. We're about to give you some antidotes for these problems. I also want to give you some tips on how to keep your house cool, because we all want to save money on that power bill. That's a big deal in the summertime because we're cranking up the amps trying to stay cool. Close the blinds, especially if it's a window that's facing the sun. That sunlight's coming right inside the glass. It's heating everything up. Close them, keep that out. You'll knock down your energy bill. Make sure and use the air conditioner. Some people don't even have it. I hear from you every summer, folks that are unfortunately don't have an AC unit, and you are suffering. but don't pinch on the pennies to the point where you're causing yourself harm either. Use the AC and use those fans to help cool you down as well. Here's something we do around our house. We seal little gaps and cracks around windows. I use painter's tape. I don't care if it's bright blue and what it looks like. In the wintertime, it keeps the heat in, and in the summertime, it can keep the cold air in as well. Limit using that oven if you can, because it's going to generate some heat around the house. And I'll tell you something else I do. Don't be afraid to lie down on that cold floor. You know, our dogs do it, and they're pretty smart because they know cold air sinks. The floor is going to be much cooler than up high. And if you come in and it's just, you need to get some water in you, you need to cool down quickly. And of course, a cold shower can make that happen as well. So let's end this with talking about some do's and don'ts. Let's start with your hot weather do's. What should you do? Well, drink water, of course, and electrolyte fluids. That's going to be pretty important if you're out really cranking out some energy in the heat. And you can do that through sports drinks or electrolyte powders. There's lots of things out there you can take. Did you know you can also eat electrolyte-rich foods like nuts or bananas or spinach, potatoes, yogurt, something that puts those electrolytes and sodium, which you need in your body. Hey, friends, take care of your AC. I've got a very good friend, lifelong friend, who's a heating and air genius. And he told me this a long time ago. You've got to go outside with your hose, get one of those high-powered nozzles, and clean out the little grills around the outside unit because it will get clogged with dust, dirt, grass clippings, and then your AC unit can't work properly to help cool things down. So get out there and get that little water nozzle high pressure and clean that thing out. Then make sure you are cleaning out your filter on the air return, wherever that is, usually 1 to 3 months. If you can see light through it, it's usually pretty good. Here's another one. This tip would have saved me hundreds of dollars. Every one of those air returns, usually in an attic, has a little tube coming out of it that takes the condensation away. And it's going to have a little cap where you can look in there to see the little water stream driving by. You got to pour about a cup of bleach in there once a month is not a bad idea in the summer because that pink slime will build up. And as I learned, it will crack your pipe and come through the wall, and you got to pay a ton of money when all it took was a cup of bleach to fix that. So make sure that you're doing that as well. Listen, I have to say this I used to say this every year when I was on air, and I always felt bad saying it, but I'm going to anyway. Be smart about what you wear. We've all driven down the road and seen some person, usually young, wearing a black hoodie or black sweatshirt, black clothing on a steaming hot day. That's just going to knock you out. You've got to wear light colored clothing because it reflects the sunlight off. When I'm out working or going to be outside in the heat, I always try to get the brightest shirt I've got so it will act as a reflector. And I'm drinking water ahead of time. Listen, using fans, doing all those things. And if you live in a part of the city where it's tough to get AC, check into a cooling center and make some calls to your local government officials because they do open those up for folks, and those are great to have. Now, what about the don'ts? Listen, don't chug water all at once. I mean, you got to get the water in you, but drink water and good fluids before you head out. And then consistently, you know, I like to set little timers to make myself stop cutting the grass. So I'll come in, cool off for 10, 15, 20 minutes, drink a lot of good water or whatever, iced tea, whatever I've got, and then I head back out. You got to think ahead instead of trying to play catch up. It's kind of like taking pain medicine. You want to get that pain medicine in after a surgery before the pain hits. You want to make sure you've got that water in your body before you start sweating. Avoid too much sodas with caffeine and alcohol because those actually will dehydrate you. That works against you. And here's one. Don't be a hero. Don't tell me how tough you are. And back when I was a kid, I worked outside 87 hours a day. Well, that's great. But now you're going to get taken out by the heat. So sit out the hottest part of the day, find some shade, cool your jets, and take a break. All right. What about sports outside? I'll finish with this. You know, most schools out there, over my years of working, I would get calls from, coaches, trainers from all these high schools. Should I call the practice? Should I not? Normally, they will call off a practice if the heat index on the field gets to roughly 105 degrees or higher, the heat index, because again, that's what your body is battling, that humidity. And those kids just have, especially with all those pads on or whatever, helmets, it's hard to cool off. Here's the tricky part. Those measurements are usually taken field by field. It's hard to give you a specific number when your reading is coming from Memphis International Airport or whatever your local airport is, your official reading station. So we can get you in the ballpark with those official reading stations, but now they're coming out with more and more advanced equipment where these trainers and these coaches can actually take a reading themselves right on the field. And usually if it's near 105, they will call that practice off. But make sure if you've got kids going out to any kind of outdoor practice, activity, whatever, make sure they know all these things, that they're staying hydrated and that they will be safe as can be. All right, friends, let's do one more thing. Let's talk about our good friends again at Lexus Memphis and tell them thank you for being a part of this entire endeavor. And hey, if you've got a question, something you'd like to have answered, or maybe a topic you'd like covered, we've got a good lineup coming our way. Email us. You can email us at thecurrenttemp@gmail.com. You can watch us here on Facebook, YouTube, or Spotify. Hit that subscribe button because that's going to help us make this continue. If you guys are there, we want to make sure that we hear from you and that we know what you're interested in and what you think. Make sure that you just kind of keep in touch with us so that we can continue to bring you all the stuff that you want to hear and talk about. All right, friends, it's the current temp and it's hot outside, so stay safe and stay cool.